Nothing artificial about artificial intelligence is our topic today. And to my immediate left is Brooke Luedke. Brooke is the lead data scientist at Target and does finance and merchandising forecasting data science work for Target. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but I'm guessing so, because I think it's a mega strategy at Target is to have you come in for 5 things and leave with like about 35 things. So whatever Brooke is doing, she's doing a masterful job, because Target gets people to buy more than they intend to do, at least in my case, every time I'm there. Justin Grammens is in the middle. Justin helped me pull this together. Justin and I have been friends for many, many years. Justin also has his AI group called Applied AI, and they have a Zoom event tonight, and then they have a conference that Justin will tell you a little bit more. It's May 12th, right? May 12th?
You got it.
And so Justin will tell us a little bit about that. He's founder and CEO of Lab 651, which is a leader in mobile, web, and artificial intelligence. And like Bonnie, which you're going to hear about in a moment, Justin has had a very diverse set of experiences, and appreciate all the support putting this together, Justin. So thank you. Last but not least is Bonnie Holub. Bonnie is a data science leader and AI evangelist, and also, like Justin, has done so many interesting things that has a fabulous blend of experiences that she'll tell us about. And Bonnie and I have crossed paths over the years as well. And so we have a wonderful panel here. Looking forward to our conversation, and thank you all for being here. Why don't we start with you, Brooke, and just talk a little bit about your background and fill in a little color commentary on what I teed up.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. My name's Brooke. I studied statistics in my undergrad, more theoretical, and then I joined the railroad maintenance industry at LRAM, which is in Medina. Worked there for a couple of years, decided my degree was too theoretical, so I got an applied data analytics degree from Penn State. And then while I was doing that degree, I got hired at Target, and I started in their supply chain data science team doing trailer fleet size optimization and robotic data analytics for all their supply chain robotics. Then I realized I'm not a huge supply chain person, so I joined the digital team and helped them do digital data collection. And now I am doing their sales forecasting for the finance org. So that's a little bit about my story.
Okay, so is it true that, heavy duty stuff gets poured into making people like me buy more than I really want?
I mean, they definitely put it in front of your face.
Okay.
So you see it on purpose.
Just checking. All right, Justin, tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. I'm Justin Grammens, CEO and founder of Lab 651. Been developing software for more than 20 years. At Lab 651, we help companies build custom software solutions using our talented team and our proven process. I also am very involved in the community, so I've started a number of different community groups around technology over the years, and I'm always like looking at the next thing. And we started this Applied AI meetup group about 3 years ago, and we meet on the first Thursday of the month, as Rick mentioned. It's appliedai.mn, if you get a chance to check that out. We have more than 2,000 members or so, and so we meet. We have been meeting virtually now for the past couple of years, but we're starting to bring those back in person. And then I do want to plug the conference. It's appliedaiconf.com, and we'll be meeting on May 12th, and everyone's welcome. We had a conference. Was anyone in the one in November we did here? All right, one guy. Yeah. So, and hopefully you enjoyed yourself. But it's for people that are just interested in the applications of artificial intelligence. So there's going to be a lot of people talking about AI. Business applications related to it. There's going to be a whole track around the kind of getting deep into the data, but there's a whole track just around just applications of it. So anyone is welcome. We had a great day in November, and we'll be doing it again on May 12th. So I also have a podcast where I speak with leaders in artificial intelligence. trying to get these two to be on the podcast here soon. And then I also teach at the University of St. Thomas, and I'm an adjunct professor there, and I teach in a machine learning and Internet of Things class. So I've been doing that for the past 6 years or so as well. So look forward to the discussion.
Great, thank you. Bonnie.
Sure. My name is Bonnie Holub, as he said. I have a Ph.D. in artificial intelligence, and I've spent my career correlating disparate sets of big data for actionable results. I started out my career as a Honeywell research scientist building combat information fusion test beds for the Army and the Navy and the Air Force. I was a tenured professor in the graduate programs in software at the University of St. Thomas, helped them stand up their data science program. I'm on advisory boards for the University of Minnesota, helped them stand up their MS in data science in the business school. And I like to brag that of the top 5 data science master's program in the country, 2 of them are here in Minnesota, and I've been able to have a really fun time working with both of them, getting them started. I've founded, grown, and sold companies, and the last few years I have had the chance to serve in a number of different roles. I was a master data scientist at Cognizant. I led a data science team at Teradata for about 3 years with people from Chile to Canada reporting to me. And right now I'm at Infosys, which I really love. I'm serving as the chief architect on some AI projects that we're rolling out, and I'm the editor of the inaugural Infosys AI and Automation Journal. We published the first one in November, and the next one's coming out. I've published about 60 different articles over the years in different conferences, proceedings, and things like that. But I'd never been the editor on a journal, so that was really a fun ride. And I'm just delighted to be here today, so thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you so much. And we're going to actually start with you. And why don't you give everybody just a brief history on artificial intelligence?
Right, so AI is one of those things that's kind of been a moving target because it's always whatever a computer can't do well is what AI is researching, doing, and wanting to do. And we were talking at the table about how there was a time where a grammar checker was something that was a research activity in artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence, really the term got coined in 1956 at a Dartmouth Summer Research Conference. So at that point they said, boy, computers are so advanced here in 1956 that if only we can write down the rules to human logic, we can easily write a computer program to do that, you know? And think about 1956. In 1950, UNIVAC had predicted the outcome of the presidential election with only 10% of the vote in. So this was 6 years later. Think about things that were coming out 6 years ago here. I mean, it was like version 7 of the iPhone. That's like ancient history, right? You know, we've had so much technology come out in the last 6 years. But it was at that conference that the term artificial intelligence was coined. It has been a field that has gone through the hype cycle many, many times. And the hype cycle, of course, includes the, undying excitement and hype over something, and then the valley of utter dismay because it doesn't turn out to work that well. And we call that cycle, there are AI summers and AI winters, and there's been probably half a dozen of them. The first one happened in the 60s. It was machine translation. And there were some utter failures in machine translation. We wanted to know what the Russians were publishing in their scientific journals during the height of the Cold War. And then there were cycles in the 80s and 90s when people were building expert systems, which sounded really good, but then they were hard to maintain. And the thing that's really different, we're in an AI summer right now, is that in the last decade, we've gotten huge data sets that are available. And so there's a lot of stuff that's just been statistical kind of results like deep learning and TensorFlow and all those models. But it's hinged on the fact that we have these huge data sets available. Another thing that has changed in the last 10 years is open source software. So when, for example, I know we'll be talking about ChatGPT sometime, but that's out and available, and anybody can use it and touch it and get to it. So there's much more of a sharing in the scientific community, so that once one of us gets smart, all of us get smart at the same time. So, and this is not unprecedented or unpredicted. Hans Moravec wrote a book in 1988 and then revamped it in 1999. Let's see here. Robots, mere machines to transcendent minds. But he predicted this exponential growth. And exponential growth, when you're living through it, looks like it's just, oh, things are getting better and better, but then all of a sudden things seem to accelerate. This is definitely a field for that kind of hyper-acceleration, and it's definitely a field for overblown expectations and ideas and valleys of disappointment, but then it kind of settles down. And think about all the technology that we have that would have been considered artificial intelligence even just a few years ago. You know, knowing where you are, giving you directions, all of those kinds of things were part of research problems at one time in artificial intelligence, but then they get implemented and you think, oh, of course my phone knows where I am 24/7 and can give me directions and call 911 if I say, I accidentally said SIRI, I can't even say it out loud, call 911 the other night, and all of a sudden I was getting a call back from the dispatcher saying, are you okay? And I said, yep, so there you go.
All right, so two things. You used the term AI winter. Give us just a little bit about that and why this AI winter might be different. And then the other thing comes up a lot, privacy concerns, and what you just said is a privacy concern. So talk just quickly about winter, AI winter, and then privacy concerns.
Sure. So really, the summers and the winters revolve around DARPA funding. DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, which is the part of the federal government that funds a lot of cutting-edge technology. And their funding gets really rich when there's a lot of good technologies coming out, and then it completely dries up when there aren't. And so the last winter, I think, that sort of occurred was after 2008. And it was partly because of the general economy. And people were less encouraged about technology and feeling like, oh, there's a recession, we're down in the dumps, we can't do new things. But sometimes it can also be affected by who's in office and the administration's priorities. What was the other part of the question?
Privacy concerns.
Oh, sure. So privacy concerns are a huge deal, right? And as we have these huge data sets that are available, people like us who are professional data scientists spent a lot of our time looking at the data to see what can be used ethically and legally, and making sure that when we're training models, we're not training them with the same biases that would make the use of the model be illegal for some reason. So there's a huge branch in this. One of the leaders that's doing research in this is Dr. Joy Buolamwini. She recently got her Ph.D. out of MIT, and she does work on Algorithmic Justice League is her nonprofit that she works through, but it's making sure that your data isn't just trained on a biased data set or that it's being used unethically. That's a huge area that a lot of people are concerned about. At Infosys, because we're a 350,000 person company, we have offerings on ethical AI and fairness and all those kinds of things, because it's absolutely essential for companies as they're going forward. I suspect Target would have some insights on that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I paid you extra to lead me there. So, Brooke, tell us a little bit about ethical AI and governance.
Yeah, and something that's really accelerated ethical AI is the state of California passed a bill probably 5 years ago, it got implemented in 2020, I think, of you can request what data a company collected about you at any time. You can also request that they wipe any historical data at any time. So that forced any company that does business in California to get their data under control, depersonalize it, make sure they're not doing anything that you wouldn't want any person to request from you. So that was a big driving point for a lot of companies to kind of get their data clean and ethical. Biased people make biased algorithms. Biased data collection makes biased algorithms. Everyone's biased, so you can't totally avoid it. But one thing I like to talk about with other target people is how a lot of smaller companies start, if they build an app, they start with an iOS app and then eventually get to Android. And usually new features are rolled out at iOS first. Prior to Android. Target's pretty good about doing them in parallel, but if you are only releasing iOS features, your data collection is only from iOS users, which is usually a wealthier subset of people, usually leans Americans. The rest of the world is more Android. So there's all these little decisions you make that bias your data collection, and if the people building your algorithms are all from one education background, one just like human background, then they only have the viewpoint of what they've experienced. So they will build a bias algorithm because everyone will build one. So you need a big variety of people working on these projects so that as much consideration as possible goes into them. Yeah, I think those are the biggest things.
I want to amplify something you said. You know, the California law is really the first U.S. law about that, but it is following on GDPR, which is a European initiative. And the other thing that Europeans are leading on, in my opinion, is they're having a AI bill coming out within the next year. We think it's going to be signed into law that will have similar restrictions. And so those of us that do business worldwide and globally are mindful of all of that.
Yeah, unfortunately, the U.S. doesn't have a federal law, but you're going to have to follow whatever state is the strictest. So that's kind of
and right
the
now
route
it's California.
Yeah, and so California is kind of leading the way on ethics and AI.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in. We had a person from Northwestern University at our meetup last month, Nan McDonald, and she talked about healthcare and AI. And she said that what's interesting is people don't realize it, but a lot of the healthcare data is actually from major systems. So it'll come from Mayo, it'll come from the Cleveland Clinic, it'll come from all these large organizations which don't actually represent a large swath of the population. So when they're capturing all of this information and all of this data, there's a lot of minorities, there's a lot of low-income people that are left out of the equation. So something that I was like, wow, I didn't realize that, and that was one of the things that she pointed out. So just to kind of piggyback on top of that I mean, it's everywhere. It's not even in retail. It's in healthcare, and those decisions that are being made biasly, right? They're not actually benefiting the people that most often are the ones that are in the hospital and that need the help the most.
All right. Hey, Brooke, tell us a little bit more about AI as it's being used at Target and then maybe retail in general.
Yeah, and Target uses AI mostly for a guest experience purpose, to give you better item recommendations, help you search for your item better. I think the newest one that I was a part of the development of in the digital world is personalizing the website itself. So if I open the Target app right now, I'll see a different screen than he'll see. If I'm only looking for women's clothing, that's what they're going to show me right away. And if he's only looking for pet food, they're going to present him pet food right away. So I think the biggest move that Target's making that you'll notice is personalizing the website for each guest so that an ease of shopping. I think that's the biggest.
And then how about just in general popular culture? What's going on in society?
I'll bring the TikTok. And I think the biggest thing you see with Gen Z is that they talk about algorithms in their daily conversation. Like, the Spotify algorithm doesn't understand my music taste well enough, or like keeps replaying the same songs. Like, they talk about they grew up with algorithms, and it's much more part of their daily life and their daily conversation, and they are cognizant of them. I think that's the biggest shift we're seeing in the day-to-day world. And then you see something like TikTok, which has a really good algorithm at finding things you're interested in. And they talk about, they're like, oh, my algorithm would never show me this, or mine only shows me cats, or like things like that. Everyone has a completely different experience on TikTok because their algorithm's so personal. Obviously, there's data privacy issues there, but they are good compared to like a YouTube. They're a lot better at finding you the content that you want to see. So I think you see, and then you also see Gen Z is using TikTok as a search algorithm now. They don't, instead of going to Google, they'll go in the search bar in TikTok and find a video of somebody talking about it, which makes it fact checking a little bit more difficult. But yeah, a lot more day-to-day algorithm use for the younger generations.
Okay. Cool, thank you. Justin, tell us a little bit about your applied AI group here in the Twin Cities. You're kind of right in the middle of a lot of different activity. You also have the podcast and other meetup activities and the conference. What are you seeing people talk about? What are people interested in? What are you hearing as you're involved with all these various activities?
Yeah, good. Good question. Well, I mean, I can think about the conference that we had back in November and just kind of run down the list. You know, we had Optum that was there, people from United Health Group, talking about how they're using graph databases and different technologies to quickly sort through all of this data and then be able to create AI models. We had Dan Mallon, one of the people from Lucy, which is basically a company that will come in and essentially archive all of your internal documents. And their whole point is to basically make the smartest employee within your organization, right? So when two companies even merge together, you might have thousands and thousands of documents that people had written, but no one's ever going to look at them again. So they build a conversational AI. Think about ChatGPT, but within your company, right? That has all of that knowledge, right? We had a company, Centera, which you're familiar with, Rick. They talked about AI in agriculture, right? So what they do is they fly drones over farmland, and they figure out where fertilizer should be applied and where it shouldn't be applied. We had banking. U.S. Bank is using it when you fill out a mortgage form, right? Hundreds of pages of information. Well, they're scanning all of that information, and now they're digitizing it. And all of that is using AI, computer vision, OCR, object character recognition, to do all that. And so they're automating a lot of this process. And then we had a guy from Microsoft come in and talk about in the industrial space. So they're working with petroleum companies that are out, doing oil rigs and drilling. Well, people are supposed to wear hard hats in a lot of these situations. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But there's lots of video going on within these organizations, and now the AI can make sure that people are wearing the proper safety gear that they should or shouldn't be doing. That's an example, like, what human's going to sit there and watch the screen 24/7, No, that's not going to happen. So I would say that what I tell people is, like, the broad category you should be looking at across your organization or within your company is, where are there activities that humans are not good at, which is staring at a screen for 24 hours. What is a high volume operation that's happening, right? Is this happening a lot? Is this something that needs to be monitored a lot? And then how can you set up some sort of bounds or rules around that? So those are sort of like the three things. If you've got a problem within your business that touches on even two out of those three things, that's a prime candidate where you should start thinking about where you can use artificial intelligence for it. So those are some examples of some big companies that are doing stuff, that spoke at the conference. But then even like smaller scale stuff. On the podcast, I talk to people a lot about marketing and artificial intelligence. How can we generate content? How can we, Google Analytics has got a lot of that stuff that they're building more and more into it. There's companies, I just thought about it today actually on the way here, where you could start using it for competitive analysis, right? It's much more easier to start asking these bots and this information about what are my competitors doing rather than trying to sift through a lot of stuff that's going on at Google. And then there's a huge thing going on around tooling, right? So a lot of this stuff can be done now in a no-code or low-code environment, whereas you don't even need to have a data scientist on staff in a lot of ways. You can experiment around and try some of these things. So there's a lot of companies in this space around helping people. If you've got a bunch of data, how can you quickly train a model and be able to start experimenting around stuff? So those are other companies that are getting a lot of venture funding, and I'm talking to a lot of those right now. So it really, the beauty of AI, I think, is that it spans so many different markets. It touches literally everything from consumer, to industrial, to large enterprise corporations. It's really a fascinating space. So yeah, hopefully I've touched on some of the areas that we're working in.
So tell us a little bit about your startup that helps presenters by using a virtual presentation coach. Tell us about that, and how is AI utilized in that situation?
Yeah, I can give that example, but I think Bonnie was going to chime in real quick.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll
come back to it.
Yeah, so one thing I neglected to mention at the beginning is that, I have a startup company that we help presenters become better. And the way that works is instead of having a human, my co-founder is he's a professor at a university in Cleveland, and he came to me, again, a human problem. I watched my students over and over and over present. I watched 200 presentations over the course of a semester. How can I use an AI to basically make sure that they get to that 80% level, and then I can come in and coach them on getting the best ways, right? And so there's some common rules, right? You should use your hand gestures as you're presenting, right? You should look at the audience. You should not say so many ums and ahs. You should speak to about 120, 150 words per minute, right? Maybe you want to start using a vocabulary that is rich with, insightful words, right? Or positive things, right? So we coded up a number of different rules here now, and so the presenter can actually present, And he can set a number of metrics with regards to, I want to have these many space fillers per minute, I want to have them speaking at this level, and they just practice. It's a practice field for them. And it's a prime example of again, a situation where now he can focus his time as a professor on more interesting topics, more interesting things, and maybe working more with the students on their PowerPoint, making sure that the PowerPoint looks nice. And so we've been able to bring this technology now as an AI virtual assistant to hundreds of students as he's been working through his classes over the course of the past 2 years. And now it frees him up. So that's a prime example, I guess, out of the three things that I talked about. There's a clear set of rules, and there's a lot of time being wasted with regards to humans doing things that they're not so good at, which is listening to the same thing over and over again. So yeah, the company's called Captivation, and that's our platform. We're basically allowing people to become better presenters.
Great. So Justin, you and I first crossed paths with the IoT world and your interaction there. Talk a little bit about how the adoption of AI has gone relative to IoT. What's different? What's similar? Maybe compare and contrast the two.
Yeah. So I started working in the Internet of Things probably before it was even called IoT. it was like in 2010 or so. And back then the whole idea was let's put sensors on everything, right? Let's start getting a whole bunch of data from the physical world. Why? Not sure, right? But it seems like it'd be something that'd be interesting to do. And I feel like there's some similarities with regards to the way that AI is being implemented and the way that Internet of Things kind of has been and still sort of is to these days. The Gartner hype cycle, like Bonnie was talking about, everything works through that. There's this, inflated expectations, and then it falls into this trough of disillusionment, and then it finally works into this what they call the plateau of productivity. And IoT followed that exact same thing. I think the other thing that happens a lot, and we haven't really talked about it up here, is there's a lot of failures. There's a lot of companies that try and do AI or they try and do IoT, and it's easy to do on a Raspberry Pi or easy to do on a little thing in a weekend project, and the same thing with a lot of the AI stuff I'm talking about. It's easy to do on a small scale, but then there's just this whole how do you build it for enterprise and build it for scale and retrain these models? So, on the onset with a lot of the IoT projects that we worked on seemed pretty trivial to do, and then once you got sort of into the thick of it, it became a lot more difficult. So those are a couple of the similarities that are happening. You're seeing a lot of companies that fail, because in a lot of ways they're applying the technology the wrong way. They're trying to take their existing business process and then throw some more technology on top of it, instead of taking a look at how can I keep the technology the way that it is and adjust my business process to that. And what I saw with the Internet of Things and have for the past decade is companies aren't ready to change yet. I found these companies that were 50-year-old companies that had just done the way that they'd always done, and the sensors to them and all the data that we were collecting just didn't make any sense. Now, where are some of the differences? I feel like AI can be applied in so many different areas. It's not just so focused around electronics and sensors and sort of the novelty of getting this data. It can actually be applied to the way that you write, the way that you can deal with this video, that I'm talking about. It can be dealt in marketing. It can be dealt in sales. There's so many different areas that it can touch. So it's a much richer example. I also feel like you're seeing a lot more things that are becoming publicly available. And we talked about ChatGPT at the beginning. I mean, there have been tools like that. I remember reading about companies back in 2014 that were able to do that exact same stuff. They were just doing it in a very focused area. So there was a company that was out of North Carolina, and I forget their name, but they would essentially write financial reports every quarter, basically a review of how these publicly traded companies were doing. I remember an article, a human did it, and then an AI did it. And the AI did it better, faster, and cheaper than this human did. And this was arguably almost 10 years ago now. But what's changed now is that now anybody in this room can go to a website and type in anything they want. And so the light bulbs are starting to go off. And that is completely a game changer, I think, with regards to adoption and people understanding where this could be applied to. So I think there's a number of different areas where I think this technology is different. I'm also viewing it as a follow-on type thing. I did a lot of stuff with IoT where we collected a lot of data from manufacturers of a large appliance company that we worked with, have worked with for many years, so a lot of smart appliances in people's homes. Then they turn to us and say, we got all this data, what do you want to do with it? And I'm looking at it going, well, a human can't go through this stuff, right? There's too much. So let's start applying a lot of these new concepts, deep neural networks, and as the AI has gotten even better, now we can start getting a lot more information, out of it as well. So a lot of these IoT projects that I was working on now have moved into AI projects because that's really what is needed.
Right.
Can I amplify something you said a minute ago? And you were talking about productionalizing systems, and that's huge. And we're throwing around some terms kind of fast and loose here, so I just want to take a second to say artificial intelligence is the general field. Machine learning, natural language processing, computer vision, image recognition are all branches of research in that field. Data science is the application of those technologies to business problems for business value. But productionalizing is huge. It's widely known that 85% of machine learning models never get implemented into production. And sometimes it's because we're data scientists, we have a lot of hypotheses, we try a bunch of things, but it's also really hard to get them into production. Our team just productionalized a system for a Fortune 50 global logistics company where we're doing 350 million packages a day that we're tracking through the system, and we're doing something on the order of 3.5 billion predictions a day. That's huge. The system that was originally implemented had 17 minutes end-to-end that it took to do the prediction, and they wanted us to bring it down to 5 minutes. In fact, we got it down where it's running on average 37 seconds. So that's a huge change in productivity. Also, we increased the accuracy by 100%. So you're getting better predictions on when your package is going to arrive, and you're getting it faster, and you're getting it more complete. But that whole process took a whole bunch of hard work from engineers, getting the pipeline set up, putting it in the right system, making systems that weren't supposed to work together, and that's why a lot of these systems never make it to production. This is such a significant product that at our 350,000 person company, it's among the finalists for the top engineering award for this year. And when we presented to the judging panel a week ago, one of the judges said, oh, I think it's more like 90 or 95% of machine learning models never make it into production. So that was a big differentiator for us, and it's part of what differentiates us is our ability to take it all the way through. I'm sure you see that as well.
Yeah, that's a big problem at Target because we have a lot of really smart data scientists, but it's a lot of work to get a major model out. Like mine is 1 billion records, and it's a lot of data, and it's really hard to move. And you can't have a data scientist without a team of engineers to support them, or else they'll never have time to actually do any data science because they have to build the data pipeline and make sure everything runs reliably. So it's as an important investment as getting data sciences is having, if you have a good data scientist but no engineers to support them, then it'll just cost you more in the long run. And it's taken the industry as a whole a while to get to that point.
So we talked a little bit about the Gartner hype cycle, and we could do a postmortem and be here for a long, long time to describe kind of why we got to where we're at. But got a lot of good forward-looking questions. So let's just start looking forward and say, what do you think are the business applications that are going to have the greatest impact or the best suited to utilize AI? No particular order.
I'll say what are the ones that I've had challenges with the most are finance and healthcare, because you need to know why your algorithm made the decision that it made. And if you have a black box, like a neural net kind of model, you have no idea what inputs it considered, what things it emphasized to make those decisions, and that can be very dangerous, especially in healthcare. And then finance is a little more of a traditional business, and they want to know what things are driving the economy, what things are driving sales. So those are some industries that it's like you can have auxiliary data collection AI to help get cleaner data, help around the system, but making those predictions you have to be a lot more careful with in some industries.
And I'll amplify that because heavily regulated industries, think about medicine and think about finance. If you're making a loan, you have to know why you're making that loan. You have to have a complete audit trail of when you changed your policies so that you can show that you're compliant. That's why I love other industries like you brought up, agriculture. And precision agriculture is really cool, right? We want to use less pesticides. We want to use less chemicals on the food that we eat. On the other hand, because we have essentially monocultures out there, every seed is a clone of the very best corn seed that we can get, then if you get an infestation in a field, it takes over the field almost immediately. So having drones looking out there, finding those micro infestations, applying just the right repair for that part of the crop and being able to deal with it quickly is essentially important, and it's very cool. I love precision agriculture for that. Retail, there are lots of things you can do, but there's also things that get you in trouble, and so you want to avoid those. And you want to make sure that you're respectful with your clients and that you have permission to deal with them and that you're compliant with all those kinds of regulations. And we see a lot of manufacturing in health and safety. We're working with a company that builds a digital twin, which is essentially a computer simulation that simulates all of your production line or all of your refinery so that it knows that when you have crude going in to the plant that has this kind of chemical composition, it should be generating these kinds of results, whether it is releases from your chimneys or whether it is the finished product that's coming out, and then is constantly comparing what you expect with what's really there to catch on things earlier, and then also making sure that as people are walking through your refinery, they're not going into places that are where they're at risk. They're not crossing over the safety limits and stuff like that. So there's a lot of cool applications that I think are coming out too.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of good ones. The other one that comes to mind is transportation. So self-driving trucks. We all think about Teslas in our cars and stuff like that, but there are already self-driving trucks, in Texas that are driving 300, 400 miles. The human's still in there and they'll take over if something happens, but they are effectively driving, and this has been happening for years. And there's a number of companies that are, in the logistics and transportation space. They're spending a lot of money in this, and I think it's going to be huge. I mean, and in a lot of ways, people are worried. Well, the truckers are going to lose their jobs. In my opinion, and from what I've talked to people, those aren't really good jobs. Those aren't jobs that people want to sit in a truck and drive for 300, 400 miles. They would much rather either take it over on the side streets, for example, or find a different job or find a different, more creative way that a human could be used, in that process. So I think there is going to be a huge amount of, well, obviously there is. We're not slowing down on the amount of things that we're shipping, right? In fact, it's just getting more and more. And in fact, I think I read some stat that by 2030 they said there's going to be 300,000. The industry is going to need 300,000 more truckers to drive. And so there is a huge number. We can't do it just on humans alone. The technology needs to basically evolve and advance to where. To support what we're going to be doing. So that's another space.
I think one thing that I hear, Target's automating processes that you would have like a new college grad do a lot. And we still need those college grads because there's so many edge cases. But I think part of it is removing the job tasks that people don't want to do, like the tedious Excel spreadsheets to maintain and keep manual data entry, like little things like that. That's not anyone's career goals to work on those projects. Like where can you kind of add in new tools that make those jobs more enjoyable and improve people's quality of life and careers?
So companies have a lot to consider when they're going to launch an initiative, and I know there's several people in the audience who are thinking that right now. What should they consider as they try to figure out how they're going to tackle this and how to start? Like, where do they start? Dummies 101 for the company that wants to go down this route but doesn't know where to start.
Good data. I mean, that's the key to everything. You have to have good data that's accurate to your business and is clean, and good like outlier detection. If something's wrong with your data, you can automate that to alert you. I think you can't have a good algorithm without a good data set.
And if you don't have good data, you'll get the chance to make good data before you get started. So
yeah,
you got to get it done. I would say, well, when we do projects, a lot of people do a proof of concept early to kind of dip their toe in the water and prove that something can be done. But we always do a proof of value. So we work on the project. We convince ourselves that we have the technology. We can put it in place. But we also say, how much can we make for doing this, or how much can we save for doing this? And having those estimates, they don't have to be exact at the beginning, but if they're directionally correct, if they're at the right order of magnitude, so that we know that you're going to save millions of dollars for this $1 million investment to build the system, I think that's important for everybody to understand. And it is challenging for a lot of people who are newly minted data scientists that have the statistical background and that understanding to understand the business and what it really means to be in the distribution centers, or what really happens when, with the trucking part of it when you're doing intermodal transportation and things like that. So I think that's important, to work with a multidisciplinary team. Brooke made the very good observation that the more diverse your data set is, the better model you have, and the more diverse your team is, the better outcome you're going to have, because you have to bring different people's experiences into it.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is just start small, right? I would say take a simple task that sounds simple, and as I've been kind of writing software for a long time, it feels like, well, that's too easy to do. Well, once you actually do it, you uncover all of the things that are like, I didn't think that was going to be that hard. So I would say find something. Don't try and boil the ocean, as they say, right? Just find something that's really small within your organization. It's like, could we just automate this in some way? I talked a little bit about low-code, no-code tools. Those only get you so far, and so I'm not saying that that's going to be your end-all, be-all, but at least you could start to see what is the value. I think that is probably huge. Start there. Start at the business problem level, what you're trying to solve. Don't get mired down into the tech yet. Figure out what you're trying to solve, and actually, in some ways, sort of write your own case for yourself with regards to what am I going to get out of this, and how is it actually going to improve the bottom line. Because at the end of the day, that's really what you're trying to do is have your business use this technology to run more efficiently.
And that's the diversity comes in there too, because you bring in someone new to your company and they'll be like, why are you guys doing this manually, or why do you do it this way? And they'll just like, I'll automate it in a week and we don't have to do this again.
Right.
So,
yeah, and I think you touched a little bit on somebody's talking about kind of explainability. There's this whole idea around AI explainability. If you just search that, because you can't just view it as a black box and just sort of throw stuff in and magically get an answer out and just take it for what it's worth. It needs to make sense. It's like when you were in school and you did your math homework and you would get the answer and you'd be like, does that feel right or not, right? And so you can't just follow the data and say, well, this is what we're going to do. You need to be able to explain it.
And there's emerging techniques coming out all the time. I mean, the SHAP analysis paper is only a couple years old, but that gave incredible visibility into things which were perceived to be black boxes traditionally, because that's important to do and to have the people understand what it's doing and why it's doing it.
yeah, my favorite new algorithm is called explainable boosting machines, and it's the merge of like a black box and then a linear regression, which is the most explainable, and it's very easy to use, but it kind of merges like the efficiency and the intelligence of AI with explainability.
And we've been talking about essentially intellectual power tools, so helping people who are knowledge workers do their job better. Also, having humans and computers work in a cooperative way, so that maybe the automated driver drives the truck to the edge of the town, and the local driver meets it there and negotiates getting around the streets and backing it up to the dock, and then the driver can go home and sleep in their own bed at night. But it's that kind of cooperative stuff, and as we're doing this, we as data scientists are constantly building better and better tools, like the libraries that you're talking about, that help us to be more effective and to be our intellectual power tools.
And so you don't need a Ph.D. to do it.
True.
No.
Yeah, no offense.
Nothing personal.
No offense to PhD up here.
All right, so we're getting close to one, might run just a smidge long. Bear with me if you can. If you need to leave, feel free. Let's do kind of a quick lightning round, so like 30 seconds. I'm going to throw a couple of questions at you, but have a quick little tight response. So where do you see AI in 5, 10, or 20 years?
Much more broadly implemented. Much more broadly implemented.
I think you'll see it more in the education system, a lot more broader training. Like you learn English, you'll learn AI.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it was the CEO of Microsoft said that everyone's going to have like an AI bot with them. It's always going to be here available. You can ask questions to, and I feel like that's going to become more and more. At least I look at my kids in their life; they're only 8 and 10 years old. But to have something that's always sort of with them, it's almost going to start. I feel like it's going to start having a personality, and you're always going to have sort of a buddy with you.
for somebody who's considering an AI initiative in the audience, or maybe is in the middle of one, what would be kind of one bit of advice to give to them, either to keep them on track or point them in the right direction?
I think checking up with that you're working on the right problem often. At Target, we present to the business once a week to make sure we're still going down the right path. Like, not building too much before realizing you're building the wrong thing.
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit at the beginning, right? So look for tasks that humans do that they don't do well, right? Make sure that you have a lot of data and that there's rules that are based on it.
Figure out the valuation. We've talked about that a lot.
What was that?
The valuation,
Okay.
and keep the valuation front and center.
Okay. All right. Sum up today's conversation. Last bit of advice. Last last nugget to share. Last comment.
Good unbiased data is the key, and then also you can build supplemental tools. You don't need to have your whole business run on AI, but you can work a lot more efficiently with it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I don't know how much to add on top of that, I guess. Like I say, to me, it's a tool. And you're going to read a lot of different hype out there with regards to all these great things that it can do. It's still evolving along the way. So sort of set realistic expectations on what it can and cannot do, and experiment, if you can, in a low-cost way.
I want to emphasize both of what you've said. You know, I think that keeping things in front of you as to what the value is, checking in regularly, all of those are really good practices. And also having some both skepticism and optimism at the same time, but giving yourself room for both. It's not all one or the other, but there's only one way we'll find out if it's going to work. Do it.
All right, so a reminder, everybody, second Thursday in April, April 13th, we're going to be talking about talent as the new HR. Hope to see you then. And with that, let's thank our panelists.
Thank you.